So first of all, thank you very much for having me. It's quite an honor to be invited, especially by our partner, Basel Institute on Governance, with whom we did a lot of the important reforms for Ukraine. And now it's especially important because we're trying to be both efficient and to follow integrity rules during the process of the restoration during the fight. And here I was trying to gather the slides we have regarding the two key topics: how to prevent the corruption and to preserve all the ideals of the Sustainable Development Goals, Sustainable Development, green restoration in this process. Basically, about the same, just because it's about the rules, it's about the procedures, and it's about the values. And I'm not tired to repeat that our fight is not only the fight on the battlefield, it's also the fight of the two systems. And it's a fight of the different systems of the values. And that's why it's so important to preserve them during those dark times. So I tried to jump through the slides fast, but like just a slight reminder regarding the problems we are facing. It's all about the migration. It's all about the relocation of the businesses and just the direct hits to the infrastructure. Those numbers are growing constantly, unfortunately, but in the same time, we're trying to reestablish the infrastructure whatever is possible, just to make sure that the people who are still living here having the access to the basic needs. Here, it's one of the most terrible attacks we had from Russia. That was attack on the Kakhovka Dam, as you know, that had devastated consequences, not only on the infrastructure, but on the nature itself. And that's how we all remember to ourselves the word ecocide, because that's actually the crime against the nature itself. So it's also the question about the mine territories. That's type of the contamination which is keeping to grow all over the country. And we do understand that the mining and demining territories becoming the part of the restoration, because before and without the understanding of the mining territories, it's impossible to restore them. We do understand that our overall goal is to return Ukrainians home, because it's not only about the infrastructure. It never was only about the infrastructure. It's about the people. And we need to ask ourselves the questions, how to motivate people to come back from the other countries. You saw the numbers in the beginning. It's nearly 8 million who left the country, but also internally displaced people. And it's all about the risks. We see the tasks and we have the eco-oriented focus here. That's why we're trying to even think about the basic services through the lenses of the implementation of environmentally friendly methods of heat supply, let's say, modernization of water supply and purification system. We are working on the development of region decentralized source generation, and I'll stop a bit more about that because it's again become not only the question of the environmentally friendly solutions on green transition, but also the questions of the fight against monopoly in this highly corrupted market, and also the fight for the national security, because it should be way too expensive for Russians just to attack the centralized energy generation, and that's why we need to go for the decentralized mode. Here we are trying to think about the creation and functioning of the financial tools, which we organized this year to manage the funds for the restoration. Actually, that was the first frame prepared by the Ukrainian government to organize the funds for the restoration. In general, together with the partners, we allocated $1 billion for the project for the restoration on the local and regional level. From one side, it's not a lot if we're comparing those, $400+ billion of overall damage, but at the same time, those funds were very important to actually deliver the task I mentioned regarding the way for the people to come back home. And here it's a slight description on the fund's principle of operation. So it was the first time when we allocated the money from the Ukrainian budget and introduced independent prioritization methodology. We made the process totally decentralized, online broadcasted, so just to make it from the beginning super transparent. And it's also was our way to make sure that we are connecting the data-driven approach by analysis of the object by object, prioritization for the recovery, but also to include the necessity to have a proper planning. Even during those flexible times, the times when we are just surrounded by black swans, we're still working on the program and planning documents, because it's also part of the corruption prevention tools, and it's also part of the sustainability policies. So our solutions are well digitalized. We have the register of damaged and destroyed property. There was a stage 0, which we started even during the 2022, to collect all the data about the damages Ukrainians have been because of the Russian aggression. This register already has the data which we're using to provide the aid to the people to repair their houses or apartments after the attacks. It's more than 1 billion hryvnias already were issued to help people right now, but it's even more important because we're thinking to use this register as a base for the international register of the damages of Russian aggression. You remember maybe that it was part of the UN resolution regarding the Russian aggression. One of the core solutions we have, it's called the System Dream, Digital Restoration Ecosystem for Accountable Management. And here we're trying to answer the question how to provide transparent, accountable management over the restoration, and in the same time fill it with the right decision-making procedures. So it's not only about the putting everything in data and digital forward, and that's the salvation. No, we're trying to rethink the processes to make sure that they are data-driven, value-driven, and they also include bottom-up approach. We're also working on the geoinformational system on the regional development. It's very important to monitor situations in communities, in regions, and it will be the basis for us to disturb not only the liquidation fund, the fund to restore the infrastructure, which I mentioned on this slide, but also the funds for the regional development, because for sure it's a huge challenge now because the regions and communities, their development is unbalanced. And basically we as a state, we need to find our ways to balance this policy. So here it's a bit about this dream system. I will kindly ask organizers to send this presentation all over to the participants so you can dive deeper. It's available online. It's also available in English, and it's actually very important that now we will prepare the update of the system in the beginning of the October. So business intelligence model and open data, for example, e-democracy tools to make sure that the citizens can make influence for the decision-making process over the restoration. And we're also trying to include the circular economic principles. So our goal is to increase the number of projects that will meet the principles of the new European Bauhaus Compass. Those are inclusive, sustainable, and beautiful. There is still a lot to be decided how practically evaluate these principles, but we do understand that together with the partners, with the architects, with urbanists, we'll find a way to evaluate the projects not only from the point of view of the direct, people needs, but also from the point of view of the Build Back Better principles. New standards of energy efficiency and inclusiveness. From the start, all our restoration became necessary to answer those two key principles. It's also something about the green and autonomous energy solutions, which I mentioned. It's something which we're working now together with many of the partners, because as I mentioned before, the energy sector was traditionally one of the most corrupted, one of the most centralized, one of the most monopolized. And for us, it's a huge opportunity to change the situation for better for our citizens, while many of this infrastructure is heavily damaged, but not all infrastructure we really would like to restore. So I was trying to run fast through the slides just to show that to make possible the answers regarding the restoration in a way to have it in a transparent, accountable way, but also the way to put the values inside. We're trying to approach it from three sides. First, it's all about the planning documents. But the planning documents works only if they have the financial foundation for them. If not, it's just the beautiful declaration. when we were testing those approaches for the fund for the liquidation of the consequences of armed aggression, we had that. It was just embedded, the principles of the accountability, the principles of the prioritization methodology, which already has 13 questions regarding the environmentally friendly priorities. So basically, it was in our dialogue together with the European Commission when we were building our methodology to prioritize the projects, like a long list, how to come from the, like 16,000 projects to 500 projects actually financed. Yes, the prioritization was needed, and we included from the beginning, already in this year, the questions and indicators for the environmental friendly solutions for sustainable development goals, principles, and actually to make sure that we are trying to follow all the obligations Ukraine is taking on itself. But again, as it goes to the corruption, as it goes to the sustainability, the transparency is working for us. Even when we have not enough capacity in the anti-corruption architecture, let's say the law enforcement bodies, etc., we can balance it with engagement of the civil society activists, with engagement of the just citizens who are beneficiary to the restoration projects, and actually to use as much as possible all digital tools to evaluate the situation and to prevent some risk during the process of the planning of the money allocation, just to make sure that we prevented the risk in the first row. I was trying to put probably a bit too much in one presentation, but I'll be ready to comment or answer your questions. Thank you very much for having me.